Early this summer, I had to drive to Calgary, and I got the bright idea of going at night. Driving at night, in the middle of the night. I figured it would be more relaxing. Fewer big trucks, eh? And if I left after midnight, I should arrive in Cowtown before the morning rush hour. Just in time for breakfast. And at first, it was a pretty uneventful drive. Few cars and fewer trucks. So I just cruised along, listening to country on the radio. Now, the biggest drawback of driving the Trans-Canada Highway across the prairies in the middle of the night is the light, as in the lack of light. It gets pretty dark out there, as there is little lighting for miles on end, and all you have is your headlights to guide you. After a while, it can get mesmerizing. The world becomes reduced to the asphalt in front of your headlights, and you're in danger of falling asleep and of driving asleep. And I wondered, how would you even know if you were asleep? So you crank the old C&W up louder and hope the music helps keep you conscious. I was an hour out of the hat in an area which could charitably, and I mean charitably, be described as a desolate wasteland, and wondering if I could stay awake long enough to get to Brooks and some gas and coffee. Brooks, Alberta. I didn't even have any other traffic to keep me on my toes. I hadn't seen another set of headlights in a good half hour. It was like I was the only one left alive in the whole wide world. I could have pulled over to the side of the road and grabbed a nap, but truth be told, I was... afraid is too strong a word. I was apprehensive about doing so. It wasn't merely because I was worried about being rear-ended by some cowboy or sideswiped by a transport truck. No, as I said, this is the middle of nowhere, and I didn't like the idea of being alone and asleep in the dark, vulnerable to any predators, human or non, who might come upon me. It might not be entirely logical, but that's the way I felt. So I cracked my window to let in a little fresh air, to see if that would help me stay awake. I was going to try and make it to Brooks. To Brooks. To Brooks. To Brooks. To Brook. No, to Brooks. Brooks. My mind wandered, and I began thinking about a Bertolt Brecht play I'd acted in at university. I played a porter hauling stuff across the desert. Hell, I was in a desert now. And in the play, as I hauled along, I chanted about all the stuff I was going to do in town once I got paid. Maybe get laid. Oh, wow. I was zoning out, and I found myself chanting, Brooks, Brooks, I'm on my way to Brooks. Brooks, Brooks, there's coffee in Brooks. Brooks, Brooks, and gas in Brooks. Brooks, Brooks, I'm on my way to Brooks. All right, so I ain't Bertolt Brecht, but he ain't me either, and he's dead, and I'm alive. For now. What the hell was there in Brooks anyway? All I could remember was this goofy dinosaur statue they had. What kind of dinosaur was it? Some duckbill thing. Hadrosaur? Surely not a T-Rex. The dinosaurs once roamed here. Millions of years ago, This arid plain had been a steamy ocean, and the dinosaurs had lived and killed and died here. And on such a dark night, speeding down this narrow asphalt band towards eternity, it was easy to imagine them still out there, converging on the hot road, attracted by the heat and the noise and the lights, to attack and rend and kill. Oh man, I really needed a coffee. But I was at least 50 miles. Or was it 50 kilometers out of town? So I pressed down on the accelerator and noticed the light in the sky. It was off to my right, out over the darkened prairie. It was bright, pure white, and at first I thought it must be a star or maybe a planet. It was certainly brilliant. But then I could see it was moving, and I figured it was a plane, maybe flying from Calgary to, Regina? Maybe I should have flown. I concentrated on my driving and on the long, straight road unwinding in front of my high beams. But the next time I chanced to look up, I was startled to see the light had drawn much closer and was exponentially brighter. I pulled to the side of the road and stopped. The intense light was getting larger by the second, and I got out of the car for a better look. Besides, I thought stretching my legs, maybe a smoke, would do me good. The radiance from the plane or star, or whatever, illuminated my surroundings, turning night to day. I could clearly see, in the intense white glare, the dry fields, the barbed wire fencing, the ditch alongside the highway. And as it drew even nearer, the light materialized into a solid object. A craft. Could it really be? An unidentified flying object? It was a donut-shaped disc of dark or black metal, perforated by portholes, which emitted a glowing golden glimmer from the interior of the craft. And from the hole of the donut came beams of incandescent white light, which were beginning to hurt my eyes. I realized the beam emanating from the craft was actually sweeping the nearby terrain, and I was suddenly convulsed by a spasm of sheer liquid terror, lest I be caught by it, pinned by it, impaled by it, like I was an insect specimen skewered by a pin. I wasn't sure what would happen to me if the light found me. I only knew I had to get out of there. Now! I jumped back in the car and was already roaring down the highway at 110 before I even managed to tug on my seatbelt. And the dazzling beam passed back and forth and then suddenly found me. The glare was like the blast from a nuclear furnace and filled the interior with a pure white light, forcing me to shut my eyes, even though I was driving at excessive speed. Instinctively, I took my foot off the gas, although I was terrified whatever it was, would catch me, would take me if I slowed down. If I didn't keep moving, didn't get away, I had to get away, away. My eyes were wide open now, but I still couldn't see, due to the after effects of the extraordinary light. I had to slow down. I had no choice, and I slowed to a crawl, praying I didn't get rear-ended by the sudden onslaught of a transport truck. After a minute, my vision returned, and I could see the road okay. And the light was gone. Not that I wasted any time wondering what had happened to it, but I put pedal to the metal determined to get to Brooks into safety. As I drove, I kept scanning the sky for any sign of the light, and I became aware of some things or objects flitting back and forth across the fields as I zoomed past. I squinted to get a better look, but couldn't make out anything more than that the objects were white or gray in color. It may have been round. I wondered if they may have been gulls, although I couldn't explain what a gull would be doing in the middle of a desert. And then one of the objects flew to the edge of the road, and I got my second shock of the night. It was a human head. It seemed to be hovering about 5 feet above the ground, and while I couldn't see it clearly, I could make out that it was male, with a thin face and long, unruly dark hair flowing out behind it, and finally, glowing red eyes. I actually slowed down, as I wanted to get a better look at it. But when I saw several more of the heads coming to join it, I hit the gas hard. What followed was a nightmare race, with me pushing the car up to 120, 130 clicks per hour. But no matter how fast I drove, the flying heads kept pace. I heard the wind whistle through the gap where I'd rolled down the window, and there was another sound as well, a loud, weird, plaintive moaning. Was it the heads? Was it coming from the heads? A band of light appeared on the horizon, and I was convinced I must be approaching Brooks. But then the line of light spread and became stronger, blinding, and I realized it was the light from the sky. Had the thing landed on the road? And then directly in front of me, and moving in fast, was the first flying head. The man with the thin face and the long, unruly hair, and the reddish glowing eyes, and it was heading straight for my windshield. It was going to hit it dead on, and I slammed on the brakes and fishtailed, and went into a skid. My interior was flooded by a tsunami of burning whiteness, forcing me to shut my eyes tight, but the light was still there. When I returned to consciousness, it was broad daylight, and the clock on the dashboard read 7:58 a.m. I was pulled over to the side of the road, which was already busy with westbound traffic. Indeed, it was the noise from a passing transport truck which woke me up. The heads were gone, and of course there was no sign of the UFO or whatever it was. I thought I must have pulled over and slept, so maybe the whole thing was a bad dream. But my sleep hadn't done me much good. I still felt exhausted and my neck hurt, and I was really hungry. I was as ravenous as a Wendigo. Wendigo? Now, why did I think of that particular word? It turned out I was only 20 minutes from Brooks, and I stopped at a Smitty's there and had the plowman's breakfast, washed down with gallons of coffee. But I was still hungry, and as soon as I reached Cowtown, I stopped at a Burger King and ate 3 Roadhouse King double burgers. 3. Again, with lots of the rancid coffee. And I was still hungry. And I'm still hungry. I made sure I drove back to Regina in broad daylight. Transport trucks or no transport trucks. But the really strange stuff only really began to happen once I got back home. It started with the dreams. In them, I felt like I was floating or flying. My head 5 or 6 feet above the ground. I couldn't feel my body, and I couldn't see it when I looked down or tried to look behind me. It was like I had no body. Even worse, as I moved over the suburban streets, I was drawn towards looking in the windows of the sleeping houses. For it was late, very late, the middle of the night, and I looked in at the sleeping people, especially the women. The women. And I tried to gain access. And if I did, I would hover over them. But I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. No. And that wasn't the only awful thing in my dreams. For I saw myself eating bugs, insects, flying things, and worms off the ground. I wake up with the most god-awful taste in my mouth, and nothing seems to get rid of it. Not even a shot of Fireball. And my neck, it feels like it's been broken. It feels like it's broken now. There's this weird guy in town, WSJ or something, who has a YouTube channel. It's all about these things he calls the night floaters. Weirdos who can detach their heads from their bodies. Yeah, I know. Who could detach their heads from their bodies in order to attack people at night. BS, right? Right? Anyway, this dude keeps trying to tell me I had a missing time episode and may have been abducted by aliens, or maybe by the night floaters. And he seems very excited about the possible connection between these floaters and the UFOs. If it was a UFO. Maybe it was just a bright light or a hallucination. I don't know. I don't know. I'm afraid to go to sleep, but I'm afraid to stay awake. For once darkness falls, there are lights outside. Bright, blinding white lights. And when I look through the curtains, I see white things flitting past my windows. Heads? But you'll have to excuse me now. I have to get something to eat. Something to eat right now. Anything. Even if I have to catch it. Now, why did I say that? The question earlier this summer was, should I drive or fly to Calgary? Drive or fly? And I answered, wrong! Hi, WSJ here. I'm the weird dude with the channel about the night floaters. Malignant beings who could detach their heads from the trunks of their bodies, the heads then being able to fly through the night, to feast on the flesh, the blood, and the sanity of their victims. I write and tell original horror stories and creepypastas, although my critics say all I write are horrible stories. But I'll let you folks be the judge. If you enjoyed this video, please share, like, and leave a comment. I try to respond to all comments if I possibly can do so. And consider subscribing for more weird tales of the night floaters. And remember, be like the Wendigo. Be like the Wendigo and stay hungry.